Okay, so hopefully you have watched the other finding factors video that essentially comes before this one. This time we're focusing on our highest common factor and what that means. So what is a highest common factor? The highest common factor, the highest or largest factor that divides evenly, no remainders or decimals, into the listed numbers. The highest factor that all listed numbers have in common. It's often abbreviated to a HCF. Now, it comes up in fractions and it comes up in algebra. So, have a think about that in terms of where it would apply in those two areas, and I'll put up a video on fractions with highest common factors later on as well. So again, the tools that you're going to need: times table is a good idea, calculator, you can do it by hand, and of course use your head. So think about what times tables the numbers appear in. Same rules as before, be logical, start small, work your way up, think, what do I know about this number? So when I say think, what do you know about this number? What times table does it fall into? List them in pairs, list one in itself. Is it even? You remember the tips from last time, and we'll practice using them again this time. So we've got two numbers here. We've got 36. And we have 144. So we go through just listing the factors to start with. Our first step is going to be just list the factors. So 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, 6 and 6. Now obviously 5 doesn't go in, and then we start going back the other way. Now for 144, if you watch the previous one, we've done this one before, so it's 1 and 144. We know that it is part of the 12 times table, which means 2 obviously goes into it, and that goes in 72 times. 3 goes into it. Sorry, I'm just going to put, I've made the list, 48 times. 4, 32 times, 36 times, sorry. 5 doesn't, 6 does, and it goes in 24 times. 8 does, and it goes in 18 times. And I should have written this a little bit lower. And 9 does, and it goes in 16. Now what we're doing is we're looking to see what is the highest common factor. So what number goes into both 36 and 144 evenly and is the biggest number? And in this instance, it is actually going to be 36. So you would just say the highest common factor for both numbers equals 36. Next ones, they're both part of the 5 times table. So remember, we think smart, we think about what do we know about these numbers. They both are divisible by 5. 95 is actually a really interesting number to look at. It's obviously not part of the tens times tables. It's not an even number, so 2, 4, 6, 8 do not go into it. 3 doesn't go into it because it ends in a 5, but we can check it also with our 9 plus 5 equals 14, which is not divisible by 3, so not 3. So we've got 1 and 95, and we have 2, 3, 4 are out, 5 goes in 19 times. 19 is a prime number, so we double this, we get 10. 10 doesn't go in, we can't half this. So this is actually as high as we can go. For 120, you've got 1 and that, 2, 60. There's obviously lots for this one because it's essentially 12 times 10, so you just keep working your way up until you get to those. 5 goes in as well, so it goes in 24 times. 6 goes in 20 times, 7 doesn't, 8 doesn't, 9 doesn't, 10 does, and that puts us at 12. So our common factors here. So actually for this one, our highest common factor is quite small, and sometimes that's going to be the case, especially if you've got prime numbers come up as quickly as they did in this instance. So 5 is the highest common factor, and again you would just list it as highest common factor equals 5 because there are no other numbers that match. Right. And again, you don't always have to have them in pairs. You can have them in 3s, 4s, depending on what you're factorising. So when you get into algebra and you're asked to factorise, you're looking for the highest common factor, and it may well be that there's 3 or 4 terms that you need to look at. So again, we do the same process as we did before, and we just list the numbers as we go through. So we end up with and the thing that I recognized first of all with these numbers is they're all part of the 7 times table. So you could always start with that and work out if you can do anything with that as well. So obviously the first one says start small and write them in pairs, but also start smart. So this one, as I said, is not 7 times 9. Well, does that mean that 21 or 14 is going to go in there as well? So if we double this or triple it even, is that going to work? So we end up with, if we triple it, because we can divide this one by 3, so 21 goes in 3 times, and again we can already see that there might well be a pattern here because 21 goes into that. So we could even start smart here and see if 21 goes in, and 21 does go in. It goes in 4 times, so we can check that by going 21, 4, 4, 8. Okay, so our highest common factor for this one, we aren't, if you're not asked to list them all, then you can just work it out logically. So I would suggest, use the first one, work out a few of the factors, and then go from there. Now the reason we do this is so that we can get to algebra. So one of the factors for this one is going to be x. Factors for this one is going to be x and y. Okay, we just don't write the times sign because it looks too much like an x. So we need to keep those in mind when we ask what the highest common factors are. Now they're both even, so we can go 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 4 and 3, and that's as high as we can go with those ones. And then using these numbers, we go, well, does 12 go into it? No, it's either 24 or 36. So 12 isn't going to be one. Does 6 go into it? It's going to be 24 or 30. Does 4 go into it? And yes, it does. It goes 4 times 7. So our highest common factor here in terms of the numbers is 4. Okay, but that's not the end of the story for this one, because we've also got the x to think about. So the highest common factor for this one that it has in common that you are multiplying by would be 4x. To get 12x, you would multiply it by 3. And to get 28y, you would multiply by 7y. Again, remembering we don't use those because they look too much like x. So both of those, if we multiply the 4x, we can get the original terms. And that's always a great checking mechanism, is to see if you're right. That's probably the hardest thing with this, is making sure that you have gotten them both. or all of them if necessary. Hopefully that was helpful, and if not, leave a comment or see me in class.